All right, let's dive right in. We are about to step into one of the most profound and frankly heart-wrenching visions in the entire Zohar. Now you have to understand, this isn't just a location, it's a living, breathing archive of cosmic memory. We are entering the fourth palace, a celestial place built from the very essence of sorrow and remembrance.
Before we even cross the threshold, we need to feel the atmosphere here. The Zohar sets the scene by telling us that when the temple was destroyed, this wave of grief just permeated everything, all of creation. The Holy One weeps, the heavens and the earth weeps. So this cosmic sorrow, it isn't just an emotion in the background. No, it's the very air we're about to breathe inside this palace. It's the foundation it's built on.
So to navigate this incredibly deep space, we've got a roadmap. First, we're going to witness the vision of the palace itself. Then, we'll meet its central figure, the weeping Messiah. After that, we'll decode the palace's secret function as a kind of global memory archive, and we'll understand the cosmic engine, the Sephirot, that powers the whole thing. Then, we'll unravel the mystery of the garment of woven souls, and it all leads to its ultimate purpose, the final tikkun, the great cosmic repair.
Okay, let's begin. I want you to imagine we're walking through these celestial realms, and we arrive at the entrance of this fourth great hall. What we're seeing, it's not made of stone or gold. It's built from something far more permanent, universal grief itself.
The first thing you notice is the light. It's this soft, silvery glow. And then you realize where it's coming from. It's coming from rivers. Actual rivers of tears flowing through the halls of the palace. The Zohar describes the souls of those who mourn for Zion, the righteous who've grieved for the destruction of the temple, for the pain of exile. And their tears, they aren't lost. They become the very architecture, the very geography of this sacred space. It's a stunning, almost cinematic vision of sorrow made real. So who actually lives in this palace? Well, this is where the Zohar's vision just blows the doors wide open. Of course, you have the souls of the righteous who mourn for Zion. That makes sense. But the text is so explicit here. It broadens the scope way beyond that. Also present are the souls of pious Gentiles who were slain for their goodness. And then, get this, in this just breathtaking act of universal empathy, the souls of all the slain from all nations, they are all here, gathered together in this state of quiet dignity. And that tells you something absolutely crucial right from the start. This is not a place for just one group's grief. This is a memorial for all innocent suffering, period, across all of history. This palace is vast, and it's filled with the echoes of silent suffering. But it is not a static museum, not at all. A figure enters, and his presence, it changes everything. He is the central actor in this divine drama. He's the one this whole archive was built for. Mashiach, the Messiah, walks in. But this is not the triumphant king you might be picturing. The Zohar paints a very, very different image. He walks into this hall of tears, and his presence is heavy, weighted down by the collective pain that's stored here. He sees the visions of suffering, he feels the agony of every slain soul, and he just begins to weep. And we're not talking about a symbolic tear. This is a deep, soul-shattering weeping. He is the ultimate empath, personally and profoundly experiencing every single ounce of pain recorded in this place. And his grief is not a private affair. The Zohar tells us that when he weeps, all of Gan Eden, the entire Garden of Eden, trembles. The heavens themselves shake. This is a cosmic event. His empathy is so powerful it literally resonates through all of creation. And in this moment of just overwhelming sorrow, these princely souls from the house of David appear to surround him, to console him. And it is right then that he is shown a radiant, luminous garment, essential mystery that really holds the key to this palace's true purpose. So we've seen the cinematic vision. Now let's peel back the layers. This is the real turning point, where we shift from the poetry of the vision to its deep systematic function. We are about to uncover the sod, the secret of the fourth palace.
You know, in Jewish tradition, texts are understood on 4 levels, and the absolute deepest is sod, the mystical secret. What we've seen so far, the rivers of tears, the weeping Messiah, that's the beautiful allegorical surface. The sod is the mechanics underneath it all, the cosmic engineering of what's really going on. So let's translate this vision.
That palace of mourners, it's not just a sad place, it's a global memory archive. Mashiach's weeping, that's not just an emotional reaction, it's the empathy of a central processor, reading and fully comprehending every single piece of data. And that mysterious, radiant garment, that's a dynamic data layer, an encoding of all that suffering. And the ultimate goal, universal healing, well, that's the execution of a final justice program. This is the big aha moment. This palace is a system.
So here's the crucial takeaway. This is not a place of passive grief, where souls just sort of languish in sadness. No, it is an active, incorruptible ledger. Think of it like a cosmic blockchain for justice. Every tear, every silent scream, every act of violence against the innocent, whether they are Jewish or not, is recorded, verified, and stored immutably. Absolutely nothing is ever lost. Nothing is ever forgotten.
Okay, so if this palace is a system, a kind of cosmic computer, what powers it? How does it even function? The Zohar's answer lies in the fundamental energies of creation itself, the Sephirot. This is the engine that drives this entire process of memory and justice.
Think of it like a flow, a four-step process. First, you have Malkut, which is kingship. It acts as the vessel. Its color is a deep blue, like a vast ocean of collective sorrow, gathering and containing all the world's grief. Then comes Gevura, which means judgment or severity. This is represented by a fiery red. This is the quality that records every injustice with strict, unwavering accuracy. It holds perpetrators accountable. At the very center of it all is Tiferet, beauty or harmony, represented by this integrated gold. This is the role of Mashiach. He is the harmonizer, the processor who takes the raw data of sorrow from Malkut and the strict accounting of Gevura and balances them. And the output? The final stage is Chesed, loving kindness, compassion, a radiant white light. The entire system is designed to process suffering and judgment into a final output of universal healing.
And speaking of this cosmic engine, why is this specifically the fourth palace? Well, the number 4 in Kabbalah often represents manifestation in our physical world, an expansion outward. The first 3 palaces are often more internal, more abstract. But the fourth, it signifies a move to encompass the external world, the physical realities of history, the suffering of all peoples. It's about bringing the nations into the divine plan of memory and rectification. It's the point where the inner divine process fully engages with the whole of human history.
So let's go back to that central mystery we saw earlier, that radiant garment shown to Mashiach. Now that we understand the palace is an archive, we can finally get what this garment truly is. It's not just a piece of clothing, it's the ultimate data layer. It's the physical output of the entire system. I mean, just trying to picture this garment. It's not woven from fabric, it's woven from souls. The Zohar describes it as being engraved with the images of all the slain righteous. Every single soul is a luminous thread. Every act of martyrdom, every life unjustly taken, becomes a pattern woven into this divine tapestry. This is the dynamic data layer made manifest. It encodes all of history's pain. And again, and this is so important, the threads include both the mourners of Zion and the slain of all nations. It is the ultimate record, a celestial levush malkut, a garment of royalty where memory itself becomes a tangible, holy, and incredibly powerful object.
And this idea, it connects to a much broader theme in the Zohar, that our deeds, our very essence, create a spiritual garment for our soul in the next world. After souls are purified, they put off the sullied garments of this world and are clothed in precious, luminous garments that reflect their true spiritual state. The garment in the fourth palace is the ultimate expression of this, a collective garment woven from the highest form of spiritual currency there is, sacrifice and remembrance.
Okay, so we have the archive, we have the processor, and we have the data layer. This brings us to the final and most important question. What is the purpose of all this? I mean, why meticulously record every single tier? The answer is tikkun, the final universal rectification and healing of everything.
So how can we wrap our heads around this? Let's try a video game analogy. Imagine there's a hidden level, a memory world where every character who was lost or defeated in the game isn't just forgotten. Instead, they are honored. The final hero enters this world, and by experiencing all of their stories, he forges their collective memory into an ultimate weapon, or it may be a powerful armor of remembrance. It's the very act of remembering that gives him the strength to win the final battle.
Now, for the cosmic engineering version. The fourth palace is a distributed ledger of all suffering. It's an immutable, totally incorruptible recording system. Mashiach acts as a reconciliation engine. He doesn't just feel the pain. He processes the data. He runs the final program that reconciles all accounts, balances all injustices, and executes a state of universal justice and healing based on this perfect, complete historical record.
And that, right there, is tikkun. It's the mending of a broken cosmos.
And the Zohar's vision here is just radical at its inclusiveness. All the recorded grief, every single thread in that garment, is gathered, processed, and transformed. The output isn't vengeance, it's justice, it's healing. And this healing is explicitly for Israel and for all the nations. No suffering is left out of the final equation. Every single tear is accounted for.
This whole vision, as cosmic and grand as it is, really brings us to a very personal, very profound question. If there is a system in place that guarantees perfect memory and ultimate justice, if no act of goodness or suffering is ever truly lost, well, what does that mean for us? What is our role in the here and now while we're still waiting for that final tikkun? It's really something to sit with.
Thank you for joining us for this complete journey through the Pardes.
We hope these ancient truths help you and your family improve your own dimensions this week.
If you enjoyed this full chapter deep dive, please like, subscribe, and share which part of the journey touched your soul in the comments. We'll see you in the next chapter.